The hijacking of Flight 542 began like they all do, with chaos, screams, and terror sweeping through the cabin. Captain Dorian Brennan locked down the cockpit and watched the nightmare unfold through security cameras. 5 masked terrorists with weapons, passengers begging for mercy, flight attendants forced to their knees. And then he saw her, one woman sitting perfectly still amid the panic. While everyone else trembled, she remained calm, her eyes calculating rather than fearful. When the lead terrorist grabbed a hostage for execution, she moved with such precise violence that the captain could scarcely believe what he witnessed. What happened next would change everything he thought he knew about courage, duty, and the invisible guardians who walk among us. From which corner of the world are you watching this incredible story unfold today? If this tale of courage and hidden guardians captivates you, please consider subscribing to Last Vengeance for more extraordinary stories of unsung heroes. Captain Dorian Brennan's fingers moved with practiced precision over the pre-flight checklist. After 35 years in the cockpit, the ritual was embedded in his muscle memory, yet he never rushed. Flight 542, a Boeing 777-300R bound for Frankfurt International, deserved his full attention, just like every aircraft he had ever commanded. Among the boarding passengers, Vesper Blackwood moved with practiced invisibility. Her mahogany hair was twisted into an unremarkable bun, her charcoal business suit forgettable by design. She carried only a compact messenger bag and wore no jewelry except a vintage pilot's watch. A small detail that would later prove significant. Flight attendant Cornelia Hayes welcomed passengers with programmed enthusiasm, but Vesper declined assistance, finding her seat in row 23C. As Vesper settled into the middle section, her trained eyes cataloged the cabin's occupants. A tech executive typing furiously on his tablet, an elderly professor with a briefcase full of academic papers, 3 college students sharing earbuds and travel snacks. Standard international flight demographics. Then she identified them. 5 individuals who had boarded separately but shared subtle coordination markers. Similar brand of tactical watch. Identical posture when stowing luggage. The way they avoided acknowledging each other while maintaining spatial awareness. Captain Brennan's voice resonated over the intercom with reassuring authority. "Good morning, passengers. This is Captain Brennan, joined today by First Officer Vale. We're cleared for departure to Frankfurt with an expected flight time of 8 hours and 17 minutes. Weather conditions are favorable, and we anticipate smooth travel once we clear the Atlantic corridor." The 777 lifted off precisely on schedule, climbing through wispy cloud formations into the brilliant morning sky. 2 hours into the flight, meal service concluded and cabin lights dimmed for the long-haul portion of the journey. Most passengers dozed or focused on personal entertainment systems. Vesper maintained her cover of light sleep, while monitoring the suspicious passengers through peripheral vision. Her breathing patterns followed a precise 15-minute cycle, appearing to rest while remaining completely alert. At precisely 11:47 a.m. GMT, the coordinated attack began. The 5 suspects rose simultaneously from different sections of the aircraft. In swift, practiced movements, they donned black masks and revealed weapons that had been ingeniously concealed in modified electronic devices and personal items. Everyone remained seated with hands visible. The apparent leader commanded in accented English. His voice carried the authority of military training. Panic erupted immediately. A businessman dropped his coffee, scalding his leg. 2 children in first class began crying. The elderly professor fumbled for his medication. Flight attendants were quickly corralled to specific positions while passengers cowered in their seats. In the cockpit, emergency alarms blazed as cabin sensors detected the security breach. Brennan immediately engaged lockdown protocols, sealing the reinforced cockpit door, while Vale established contact with air traffic control. "Berlin Control, this is Flight 542. We have a security emergency in the passenger compartment," Brennan reported calmly. The cabin surveillance monitors revealed a methodically executed takeover. 5 armed terrorists had established strategic control points throughout the aircraft. Passengers were being separated into 3 groups: Americans, Europeans, and others. "Dear God," Vale whispered, watching the systematic intimidation unfold. "These aren't random hijackers. This is military-level coordination." Through the security cameras, Brennan observed something unusual. While chaos engulfed the cabin, passenger 233C, Vesper Blackwood, displayed none of the expected terror responses. Her breathing remained controlled. Her eyes tracked each terrorist's movement pattern. When forced to move with the American group, she stumbled deliberately near the lavatory section. The lead terrorist, later identified as Maxim Volkov, approached her for documentation check. During the brief interaction, Vesper's lips moved almost imperceptibly. Volkov's posture stiffened momentarily before he returned her passport without comment. She communicated something to him. Brennan muttered to Vale, That wasn't random. The aircraft's communication system crackled. "Captain, this is Volkov. You will receive new navigation coordinates immediately. Any deviation will result in passenger executions. Confirm your understanding." Brennan exchanged glances with Vale. "This is Captain Brennan. I understand your instructions." Meanwhile, Volkov established communication with unknown contacts using sophisticated equipment that resembled no commercial device in Brennan's experience. The terrorist leader's coordination suggested connections to professional networks far beyond typical extremist organizations. "Initiate Protocol 7, Volkov instructed his team. "Separate American nationals to port side, European citizens to starboard, everyone else midship." The separation process created fresh waves of terror as families were divided. A mother reached desperately for her young son. Elderly couples were pulled apart despite their pleas. During the chaos, Vesper was directed toward the American section. As she passed near the emergency exit, she appeared to lose her balance, reaching for support. Her hand briefly contacted the exit mechanism, a movement so subtle that only Brennan's focused observation caught it. The terrorist monitoring that section approached Vesper, demanding her identification. "Passport," he ordered curtly. She fumbled in her jacket, extracting documents with visibly trembling hands, a stark contrast to her previous composed demeanor. When she accidentally dropped her passport, both she and the terrorist reached for it simultaneously. Their heads drew close momentarily. Brennan adjusted the camera angle, studying her face intently. Her lips moved with minimal motion, forming words that carried some kind of coded significance. The terrorist straightened abruptly, returning her documents without further scrutiny before moving to the next passenger. His behavior had shifted detectably. What did she say to him? Vale wondered aloud. Vale had been comparing the terrorists' faces against her mental database of security briefings. The tall one coordinating at the rear exit. "I recognize him from intelligence bulletins. Shadow Brigade. They're a sophisticated mercenary organization known for complex transportation sector operations." This revelation changed everything. Shadow Brigade didn't engage in impulsive terrorism. Their operations involved multiple phases, substantial planning, and typically served larger strategic objectives. The aircraft continued on its diverted course while ground control attempted repeated contact. Following established hijacking protocols, Brennan provided minimal responses that would appear normal to the terrorists while alerting authorities to their situation. Fighter escorts would already be tracking them at maximum range. Volkov moved to the cabin's center, commanding attention. "Your respective governments have been informed of our requirements. Compliance ensures survival. Resistance ensures death." To emphasize his point, he fired one shot into an overhead storage compartment. The sharp report sent fresh panic through the passengers. Several people fainted. A businessman began audible prayers. During the resulting chaos, Brennan kept his eyes fixed on Vesper. While others flinched or protected their heads, her gaze remained locked on the nearest emergency exit. Her weight had shifted forward onto the balls of her feet. Her hands, while appearing relaxed, had positioned themselves with obvious purpose. One of Volkov's associates approached Vesper's section with bottles of water, apparently responding to a passenger request. As he bent to distribute them, Vesper's entire body language transformed. Her breathing pattern shifted to deeper, controlled inhalations. The muscles in her shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly. Volkov's voice cut through the cabin tension. "You." He pointed to a young woman in business attire seated in first class. "Stand up, come forward." The woman rose on unsteady legs, her face pale with terror. "Please," she whispered, barely audible on the camera feed. "I have a family at home. Your government requires motivation to take our demands seriously," Volkov replied coldly, grasping her arm and pulling her toward the front of the aircraft. As the hostage was dragged forward, Vesper's eyes narrowed slightly. The tendons in her neck became visible. Brennan leaned closer to the monitor, transfixed. Something extraordinary was about to happen. Vesper Blackwood moved with lethal precision. In one fluid motion, she grasped the water bottle from the terrorist's hand, used it as leverage against his wrist joint, and simultaneously drove her opposite hand into a specific pressure point at his carotid artery. The man collapsed silently. Before anyone could process what had occurred, she had already secured his concealed weapon and neutralized a second terrorist with clinical efficiency. A targeted strike to the solar plexus, followed by an elbow to the temple as he doubled over. The entire cabin froze in collective shock. For several suspended seconds, no one moved. Not passengers, not flight attendants, not the remaining terrorists. Then reality crashed back in waves of gasps and screams. Volkov released his hostage, who collapsed to the floor, and retreated toward the rear galley with his remaining associates, dragging 3 passengers as human shields. Everyone down, Vesper commanded, her voice transformed from its previous quiet tone to one accustomed to absolute authority. Heads down, hands covering your necks. In the cockpit, Brennan and Vale stared at the monitors in stunned disbelief. What just happened? Vale whispered. I have absolutely no idea, Brennan replied. But whoever she is, she's not an ordinary passenger. The galley phone rang. Brennan hesitated momentarily before answering. Captain Brennan, this is Agent Vesper Blackwood, Counter Intelligence Strategic Operations. Authorization code Crimson 9, Delta Hawk. Your aircraft has been targeted as part of a larger coordinated assault. I require immediate cockpit access. Brennan exchanged concerned glances with Vale. Ma'am, you understand I cannot open this door under any circumstances during an active security incident. That's absolute protocol. Captain, Vesper replied, her tone urgent but controlled. The coordinates they provided lead to an abandoned military installation in northern Algeria. There's a secondary elimination team waiting. This isn't a simple hijacking. It's the opening phase of coordinated attacks on major transportation hubs Munich Airport, Amsterdam Schiphol, and Frankfurt. We're talking about thousands of potential casualties. Vale was already inputting the authorization code into their secure verification system. Her expression shifted from concentration to confusion. Captain, the code authenticates as Counter Intelligence Strategic Operations, but according to the system database, Agent Blackwood was reported killed in action 4 months ago during a classified operation in South America. Through the camera, they observed Vesper's expression change. A brief flicker of understanding crossed her features. I was placed in deep cover after the Bogoat incident, she stated, looking directly into the camera. Only Director Peterson knows my operational status. There's a compromised asset within the agency feeding intelligence to Shadow Brigade. My official death was the only way to continue the investigation. While maintaining eye contact with the camera, she reached for one of the terrorists' communication devices. Without warning, she broadcast a message. Volkov, do you remember Prague? Your brother made identical mistakes. Trusting Crimson Dawn, in the rear of the aircraft, Volkov visibly stiffened. Who is this? He demanded, his composure cracking. You know exactly who this is. Vesper replied calmly. The agent you were informed died in Colombia. Blackwood died in Bogoat, Volkov responded, eyes searching the cabin to locate her. We verified the elimination. That's what Crimson Dawn required you to believe, Vesper stated. They're manipulating you as expendable assets, Volkov. The coordinates they provided, it's a termination zone. They're eliminating loose ends. The exchange confirmed her identity more effectively than any authorization code. Brennan observed the remaining terrorists' reactions, a mixture of shock and wary recognition. Vale, establish verification through protected channels, Brennan instructed. While his first officer initiated a secured communication link with authorities, he maintained visual contact with Vesper through the monitor. How do I verify you're not manipulating me? Volkov called out, his voice betraying uncertainty. The scar on your brother Dmitri's right hand, shaped like a crescent moon. He got it escaping the detention facility in Minsk. You carried him 3 miles to the extraction point. Volkov's eyes widened behind his mask. This was intelligence no official file would contain, personal information that confirmed her identity beyond doubt. The secured channel crackled with static before clearing. Flight 542, this is Strategic Command. Authentication protocol confirmed. Agent operational status deep cover classification level Obsidian. Captain, you are authorized to implement Emergency Contingency Protocol 8 at your discretion. Protocol 8 was unprecedented in commercial aviation. It permitted cockpit access to a verified operative during active hijacking scenarios, something that violated fundamental safety regulations. The fact that Strategic Command had authorized it demonstrated the extraordinary nature of their situation. Understood. Command, Brennan responded, meeting Vale's concerned gaze. They both recognized the gravity of the decision before them. I'm implementing Emergency Contingency Protocol 8, he announced, entering a complex sequence of commands that would allow single-person, one-time access through the reinforced cockpit door. Captain, she could be compromised, Vale warned. If her intent was to harm us, she wouldn't need cockpit access to accomplish it, Brennan reasoned. She's already neutralized 2 armed terrorists with her bare hands. The cockpit door unlocked with a definitive metallic click. Vesper entered swiftly, securing the door behind her. Up close, Brennan could observe what the cameras hadn't captured, the nearly invisible scar along her hairline, the hyper-awareness in her eyes, the way she continuously calculated angles and distances even in the confined cockpit space. Captain Brennan, First Officer Vale. She acknowledged professionally, thank you for trusting me. I'm not entirely certain I do trust you yet, Brennan replied honestly, but I need to understand what's happening to my aircraft and passengers. Vesper approached the navigation system without requesting permission. 8 months ago, intelligence identified coordinated attack patterns being orchestrated by a shadow organization called Crimson Dawn. They're not ideological terrorists. They're strategic destabilizers who profit from international chaos. They recruit legitimate extremist groups like Shadow Brigade to execute operations, then eliminate them to prevent exposure. She accessed the flight path display, showing their current heading. These coordinates lead to a decommissioned military airstrip that was previously a CIA operational site. There's no refueling capability, no legitimate infrastructure, except for one purpose. It's the perfect location to eliminate an aircraft, its passengers, and the hijackers simultaneously. Satellite intelligence shows a strike team already positioned in the surrounding terrain. Why would they eliminate their own operatives? Vale asked, her brow furrowed. Because Volkov and his team possess too much intelligence about the broader operation, Vesper explained. After forcing landing at that location, a coordinated missile strike would eliminate all witnesses while creating an international incident that diverts security resources from the actual targets. She turned to face Brennan directly. Captain, what I'm about to propose will risk everyone aboard this aircraft, but it's our only viable option. Brennan studied her carefully. In 35 years of commercial aviation, he had navigated mechanical failures, severe weather emergencies, and medical crises. But nothing in his extensive training had prepared him for this moment. Trusting a stranger who, according to official records, shouldn't even exist. What exactly are you proposing? He asked. We need to convince Volkov that we're complying with his demands while actually executing a heading change toward RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus. It's the closest secure facility with appropriate crisis response capabilities. That represents a significant course alteration, Vale noted. The hijackers will definitely notice. Not if we manipulate the cabin navigation displays to show our supposed original course, Vesper countered. Commercial aircraft systems have that override capability for maintenance testing purposes. Brennan knew she was correct. The system could be programmed to display false flight information throughout the passenger cabin. And what about Volkov and his remaining associates? He asked. I need to convince them that Crimson Dawn has betrayed them completely. With your permission, I want to return to the cabin and attempt direct negotiation. That's extraordinarily dangerous, Brennan objected. I've spent the past 4 months infiltrating the periphery of Crimson Dawn's operational network, Vesper replied. I have actionable intelligence about their families, documented evidence of Crimson Dawn's systematic duplicity. Volkov is a terrorist, but he's also a professional who believes he's fighting for legitimate causes. When he realizes he's been systematically manipulated, there's a real possibility of de-escalation. Brennan considered the alternatives. Following standard hijacking protocol meant continuing toward the designated coordinates while hoping military intervention could prevent disaster. Trusting Vesper meant violating established regulations, but potentially saving everyone aboard. If I authorize this approach, I need absolute assurance that passenger safety remains the priority, he stated firmly. Always, Vesper affirmed with conviction. That's exactly why I'm here. The determination in her voice influenced his decision. Initiate the course correction, he instructed Vale. Modify cabin displays to maintain the appearance of our current heading. As Vale implemented the technical commands, Vesper prepared to return to the cabin. One additional request, Captain, the emergency medical kit should contain epinephrine auto-injectors. I'll need 3 of them. Those are designed for severe allergic reactions, Brennan said, puzzled. Trust me, was her only response. Brennan retrieved the requested items from the emergency medical kit. Before returning to the cabin, Vesper paused at the door. If anything happens to me, continue directly to Akrotiri. Military response teams will be waiting. And Captain, whatever public narrative emerges from this incident, please understand that some operations shouldn't become headlines. With that cryptic statement, she returned to the cabin, securing the cockpit door behind her. Through the surveillance monitors, Brennan watched her approach the passenger area. She had adopted a completely different posture, hands clearly visible, movements deliberate and non-threatening. Volkov, she called out confidently. We need to discuss something. I'm approaching with information you'll want to hear. The terrorist leader maintained his weapon trained on a hostage. Stop there. Move any closer and someone dies. Vesper remained exactly 12 feet away. Check your secure communication frequency. It should be receiving a data transmission right now. Suspicious but intrigued, Volkov gestured for his associate to verify. The operative checked their communication device, his expression changing dramatically. Its coordinates and surveillance images, he reported. Residential complex in Belgrade. That's where Crimson Dawn relocated your wife and children after informing you they perished in the car bombing 18 months ago. Vesper stated calmly. They're alive, Volkov. They're being held as insurance to guarantee you complete this mission. The terrorist leader's composure wavered visibly. You're lying. The wooden chest set your son carries. It's missing the White Queen because you broke it during his last lesson before departing for operational training in Syria. You promised to replace it when you returned. Volkov's weapon hand trembled slightly. How could you possibly know that? Because I've been systematically tracking Crimson Dawn's operations for years. They exploit people, Volkov. They identify true believers, manipulate their dedication, then dispose of them when convenient. Your family is alive, but they won't survive if you land this aircraft where Crimson Dawn directed. Doubt crept into Volkov's expression. Prove it. Let me communicate with them. That's not possible at this moment, but I can offer something better. A chance to save them, Vesper replied. This aircraft is already changing course to a NATO facility. Your family can be safely extracted, but only if you surrender immediately. Brennan held his breath as the negotiation unfolded through the cabin cameras. The entire passenger compartment remained silent, hardly daring to breathe as the standoff continued. Volkov's associate whispered something urgent in his ear. The terrorist leader's expression darkened with realization. You're manipulating the navigation systems, he accused. The coordinates don't match our designated heading. Vesper didn't flinch. Yes, because I'm trying to keep everyone on this aircraft alive, including you. Check your secure channel again. That's live satellite imagery of the landing site Crimson Dawn provided. Count the heat signatures positioned in the surrounding hills. The associate verified, then looked up with wide eyes. Strike team. At least 15 positions. Sniper configurations. They're not positioned to assist your refueling, Vesper stated matter-of-factly. They're there to eliminate witnesses. For several tense moments, Volkov stood frozen in indecision. The weight of betrayal and the possibility of his family's survival warred in his expression. Then, slowly, his weapon lowered several inches. What happens if I believe you? He asked quietly. You and your associates will face custody and charges, but your family will live and you'll have prevented a massacre. Why would you offer this? We're supposed to be enemies. My mission is stopping Crimson Dawn, Vesper replied simply. Right now, our interests are aligned. Brennan watched in amazement as the seemingly impossible standoff began shifting toward resolution. Whatever Vesper Blackwood truly was, operative, negotiator, guardian angel, her capabilities transcended anything he had witnessed in his long career. The aircraft continued its modified course toward Cyprus, carrying its unusual collection of passengers, terrorists, and at least one covered agent toward an uncertain but hopeful resolution. The standoff continued for another 23 minutes. Passengers remained motionless as Volkov processed Vesper's revelations. His associates kept monitoring their communication device, verifying the disturbing intelligence appearing on their secure frequency. These images could be fabricated, Volkov argued, but doubt had clearly taken hold. Examine the evidence, Vesper countered. Why would Crimson Dawn direct you to an abandoned airstrip with no operational infrastructure? Why position armed personnel in surrounding terrain? Why insist on complete communication blackout after landing? Volkov's jaw tightened beneath his mask. I was told reinforcements would secure the perimeter. You were told whatever would motivate you to complete the assignment, Vesper replied. Just as you were told your family died in that bombing. Captain Brennan monitored the exchange through cabin cameras while maintaining their adjusted course toward Cyprus. First Officer Vale coordinated with military authorities, ensuring escort fighters maintained appropriate distance while preparing for intervention if negotiations failed. We're 18 minutes from Akrotiri, Vale reported quietly. RAF response teams confirm they're preparing for our arrival. Brennan nodded. Alert medical to prepare for possible casualties and trauma response. In the cabin, Vesper maintained steady eye contact with Volkov. Your window for choosing a different outcome is closing rapidly. Once military forces engage, I cannot guarantee your family's extraction will remain operational priority. The terrorist's associate whispered urgently in his ear. Something about the accumulated evidence appeared to finally break through Volkov's resolve. If I surrender completely, he said slowly, how do I know they'll be protected? Because their location has already been transmitted to an extraction team that operates independently of Crimson Dawn, Vesper stated. Their safety is separate from what happens aboard this aircraft. For several tense seconds, Volkov stood completely motionless. Then, with deliberate movements, he lowered his weapon entirely. Tell your pilot to land safely, he said. No more bloodshed. Vesper maintained her controlled posture. Place all weapons on the floor and move them toward me using your feet. The terrorists complied systematically. Each operative followed their leader's example, disarming completely. "No, remove your masks and occupy seats 28A through 28D, she instructed, hands on your heads, fingers interlaced behind your necks, as the men followed her precise directions. A collective exhale seemed to pass through the entire cabin. Passengers remained quiet, many still processing the shock, but the immediate danger had completely dissipated. Vesper secured the abandoned weapons in a locked service cart before approaching the galley phone. "Captain, situation is fully contained," she reported. "5 subjects in custody, seated and secured. Request immediate medical assistance for any injured passengers upon landing." "Understood," Brennan replied. "Military escort has joined our position. We're beginning final descent to Akrotiri in 9 minutes. I recommend maintaining the navigation display deception until we're established on final approach," Vesper advised. "Crimson Dawn may have additional monitoring capabilities we haven't identified." "Acknowledged." Brennan agreed, impressed by her thoroughness. Vesper addressed the cabin passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated with seatbelts fastened. Medical assistance will be available immediately upon landing. You are completely safe now." A flight attendant approached her cautiously. "Who are you really?" "Someone who happened to be on the right flight at the right time," Vesper replied simply, then moved toward the rear to monitor the restrained terrorists. The descent to RAF Akrotiri proceeded without incident. As they approached final landing configuration, Brennan deactivated the cabin display deception, revealing their true destination to any monitoring systems. "Configuring for runway approach," Vale announced, military ground teams in position. The landing gear deployed with its familiar reassuring sound. Through the cockpit windows, Brennan could observe the escort fighters peeling away as they approached the secure military runway. "Flight 542, this is Akrotiri Tower. You are cleared for priority landing on runway 09. Emergency response vehicles standing by." Brennan guided the aircraft down with the steady precision that had defined his entire career. Despite the extraordinary circumstances, his hands remained completely steady on the controls. The 777 touched down smoothly, rolling toward the designated secure area where military vehicles waited in formation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Brennan announced over the intercom, "we have landed safely at Royal Air Force Akrotiri in Cyprus. Please remain seated until receiving further instructions. Medical personnel will board shortly to assist anyone requiring attention." As the aircraft taxied to its final parking position, Brennan scanned the cabin cameras for Vesper. She had returned to the forward section and was speaking quietly with several passengers who appeared to be in shock. Once the aircraft reached complete stop, specialized response forces boarded efficiently. They moved with practiced precision, securing the terrorists and beginning systematic passenger evacuation. Medical teams followed immediately, attending to anyone requiring assistance. During the controlled evacuation process, Brennan lost sight of Vesper on the surveillance monitors. When he and Vale finally emerged from the cockpit, after completing all shutdown procedures, he searched the deplaning passengers for her distinctive auburn hair, but she had seemingly vanished. A military officer approached them immediately. "Captain Brennan, First Officer Vale, I'm Group Captain Morrison. We need comprehensive debriefings immediately." "There was a passenger," Brennan began urgently, "Vesper Blackwood. She was instrumental in resolving this situation." Group Captain Morrison's expression remained carefully neutral. "All passengers are being processed through our secure debriefing facility. Please accompany me." The debriefing session lasted over 5 hours. Brennan and Vale recounted every detail of the hijacking, the mysterious passenger's intervention, and the modified flight path decision. Throughout the extensive questioning, Brennan noted the careful way intelligence officers reacted whenever Vesper's identity was mentioned. Subtle shifts in posture, exchanged glances, strategic redirections. "This operative you described," one analyst asked, "did she provide any information about subsequent actions or current whereabouts?" "No," Brennan replied. "She simply stated that some operations shouldn't become headlines." Another exchange of meaningful glances between the officers. "Captain Brennan, the events aboard Flight 542 fall under strict national security classifications," Group Captain Morrison explained. "Passengers will receive modified briefings about mechanical difficulties requiring emergency diversion and a resolved security incident. Your official report will indicate standard hijacking protocols resulting in successful resolution." "That's not what actually happened," Brennan objected firmly. "Nevertheless, that will constitute the official record," Morrison stated with finality. Before Brennan could protest further, the door opened and a stern-faced man in civilian attire entered. The military personnel immediately straightened to attention. "Director Peterson," Group Captain Morrison acknowledged respectfully. The name triggered immediate recognition in Brennan's mind. The only person Vesper had claimed knew about her deep cover operational status. "Captain Brennan," Director Peterson said, dismissing the others with a subtle nod. When the room had cleared, he continued, "I understand you encountered an interesting passenger during your flight today." "Agent Blackwood," Brennan confirmed. "I'd like to understand who she really is." Director Peterson smiled slightly. "Someone you won't find in any accessible database, Captain. But her intervention today saved hundreds of lives, not just aboard your aircraft, but potentially thousands at the targeted airport facilities. The passengers deserve to know who saved them." "Do they?" Peterson countered. "Or do they simply need to know they survived? There are operatives who work in shadows by absolute necessity, Captain. Their effectiveness depends entirely on their anonymity." Before departing, Director Peterson handed him a sealed envelope. "Your flight crew and passengers will be accommodated at secure facilities tonight. Commercial transport to Frankfurt will be arranged for tomorrow. The public will receive a carefully sanitized version of today's events." 4 weeks later, Captain Dorian Brennan received a Distinguished Service Medal at a private ceremony attended only by airline executives and select government officials. The citation praised his exceptional judgment and leadership during an unprecedented aviation security incident. News reports described how the experienced pilot had expertly diverted to a military installation following mechanical difficulties, with brief mentions of a security incident that was successfully resolved without casualties. Online forums buzzed with passenger accounts of an unknown female hero who had somehow disappeared before authorities arrived, spawning countless conspiracy theories. Brennan accepted the recognition with appropriate gratitude, but found himself unable to reconnect with the passion that had once defined his flying career. The weight of the untold story and persistent questions about Vesper Blackwood lingered constantly. 3 days after the ceremony, he submitted revised retirement paperwork, advancing his departure date by 4 months. His final flight was a routine domestic service, Atlanta to Denver. During his pre-flight inspection, a ritual developed over decades, he discovered something unusual inserted into his flight operations manual. A small encrypted data device had been carefully secured to the emergency procedures section. That evening, in his hotel room, Brennan accessed the device using a specialized decryption key provided in Director Peterson's envelope weeks earlier. The device contained a single video file. The footage showed Vesper in various disguises systematically tracking members of the Crimson Dawn organization, meeting with sources in Istanbul, photographing documents in Vienna, orchestrating the extraction of a family, Volkov's wife and children, from a heavily fortified compound in Serbia. The final segment showed her presenting evidence to a classified United Nations Security Council session, her face digitally obscured, revealing the extent of Crimson Dawn's infiltration of legitimate governments and intelligence agencies. Her mission extended far beyond Flight 542. The aircraft had been merely one component in a complex international operation. A text document accompanied the video. "Captain Brennan, your decision to trust protocol violations when regulations demanded otherwise saved more than your passengers' lives. Intelligence gathered through this operation has prevented 5 major attacks and identified 23 compromised officials across Europe and North America. Some battles are fought in complete secrecy, so that ordinary people never realize they were in danger. Thank you for your crucial part in this one. Destroy this device after viewing." Brennan complied with the instructions, but the knowledge fundamentally changed his perspective. After his retirement became official, he relocated to a small coastal town in Maine, a place he had always enjoyed during brief layovers but never properly experienced. On his 5th day there, while reading at a waterfront cafe, he noticed a woman at a corner table. Her hair was now platinum blonde, cut in a modern style. Her posture appeared more relaxed, less vigilant than before. She wore casual tourist clothing and oversized sunglasses. But when she briefly removed the sunglasses to check her smartphone, Brennan recognized those eyes immediately, the same calculating, hyper-aware gaze he had observed through the cabin surveillance cameras. He made no attempt to approach her, understanding instinctively that acknowledgement would be unwelcome and potentially dangerous. When she departed 20 minutes later, she left a newspaper folded on her table. After she had completely disappeared into the busy street, Brennan casually retrieved it. Inside was a manila envelope containing photographs and detailed documents about Crimson Dawn leadership structures, operational facilities, and planned attacks across multiple continents. A handwritten note was attached to the first page. "Some conflicts continue long after everyone else goes home. Some heroes never receive recognition parades. The world doesn't know what you accomplished, Captain Brennan, but I will never forget." Enjoy your well-earned retirement." Brennan watched the crowded street where she had vanished, understanding now what few civilians ever comprehend, that ordinary, looking people sometimes carry extraordinary responsibilities, fighting invisible wars that the world may never acknowledge. In airports, on city streets, aboard commercial aircraft, they move among us, unremarkable until crisis demands otherwise. He ordered another coffee and began studying the documents carefully, knowing exactly what he would do with the intelligence and who needed to receive it. His retirement, it seemed, would not be quite as peaceful as originally planned. Some forms of service, he had learned, extend far beyond official duties. Somewhere across town, a woman with platinum blonde hair entered a different establishment, ordered espresso, and began planning her next assignment. The world had been made incrementally safer through her efforts aboard Flight 542, but the work continued relentlessly. Silent, unacknowledged, but absolutely essential. From which corner of the world are you watching this incredible story unfold today? If this tale of courage and hidden guardians captivated you, please consider subscribing to Last Vengeance for more extraordinary stories of unsung heroes. Remember to hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest content about the Invis.